The blizzard had swallowed the rural highway whole, turning everything white and soundless. Snow moved sideways, flung by a wind sharp enough to cut through bone. The world beyond Mae Thompson's windshield had dissolved into a blur of gray and white, the yellow beams of her old Ford's headlights barely carving a path through the chaos. Most folks in Greenwood County had bolted their doors hours ago, waiting for the storm to pass. But not Mae. At 71, the widow had learned that life didn't wait for comfort. Storm or not, the chickens still needed feed, and her neighbor, old Mr. Ellis, would still be alone without supper. Mae had been a school teacher once, the kind who scolded gently and baked cornbread for any child who forgot their lunch. Her knees hurt now, her hair had silvered, but her will hadn't thinned with age. She drove slowly, the tires crunching against the frozen gravel, when her headlights caught something strange in the ditch. A flash of chrome buried beneath the snow, a dark shape unmoving beside it. Mae pressed the brakes. The truck skidded a little before settling with a groan. She leaned forward, peering through the windshield, her heart tapping faster in her chest. Two men. They lay half buried in the drift, their black leather jackets dusted white, their limbs stiff and twisted. Beside them, two motorcycles leaned at odd angles, the handlebars caked with ice, their once shining surfaces dulled and ghostly. For a heartbeat, Mae froze. The patches on their backs, a skull with red wings and letters stitched in flame, told her they weren't just travelers. They were riders, members of one of those motorcycle clubs people whispered about at the diner, the kind that made decent folks cross to the other side of the street. She felt an instinctive flicker of fear, but beneath it, something older stirred. A teacher's instinct, a mother's heart, a memory of her husband's sermons about compassion in inconvenient moments. She stepped out into the wind. The cold hit like a slap. Her boots sank into snow up to her shins as she trudged toward the ditch. When she knelt beside the first man, her gloves brushed his cheek. It was hard as marble, lips blue, breath shallow. The second man gave a faint shudder, a sound somewhere between a groan and a prayer. Mae whispered one of her own. "Lord, don't let them die out here." There was no time to call for help. No ambulance would reach this stretch of road until morning. So this small, gray-haired woman made her choice. She hauled herself back to the truck, fetched a blanket and an old tarp, and returned. Her arms trembled with the effort of dragging them inch by inch toward the vehicle. Her breath steamed, her coat soaked through with melting snow, but she kept going. By the time she got them into the cab, her hands were numb, her knuckles split open from cold. She turned the heater full blast, murmuring steady encouragement to men who couldn't hear her. The road home was long and treacherous. Branches bent under ice, wind buffeted the truck sideways, and once she nearly slid into the ditch herself. But somehow, by grace or stubbornness, she made it back to her farmhouse, a small, time-worn place that creaked and sighed in winter but always smelled faintly of sage and wood smoke. Inside, Mae worked by instinct. She lit the fire, stoked it until the flames roared bright orange, and stripped away the men's frozen jackets and boots. The heat hit them slowly. Their fingers twitched. One gave a ragged cough. She covered them in quilts, filled the kettle, and moved as if she'd done it 100 times. Only when the color began returning to their faces did fear finally creep in. Who were they, really? What kind of men found themselves stranded on a back road in a blizzard? Mae fetched her husband's old shotgun and laid it across her lap, not in threat, but in caution. She studied them by firelight. One was young, maybe 30, tattoos curling up his neck like ivy. The other older, broader, with the weary face of someone who'd seen too much road and not enough kindness. They didn't look cruel. Just lost. Hours passed. The storm outside screamed like a living thing, battering the windows until they rattled. The fire crackled, shadows dancing on the walls. Mae poured herself tea and waited. Then the younger man stirred. His eyes opened, startled blue against the dim light. Confusion flickered, then relief. He tried to speak, but his lips cracked. Mae handed him water. "Kyle," he rasped finally after a long pause. "Name's Kyle. My brother's Shane." The older one groaned softly, still half dreaming. Mae nodded, her expression softening. "You're safe now," she said simply. He blinked, looking around at the humble living room, the worn curtains, the rocking chair, the shelves lined with family photos, and then at her. Something in his gaze shifted. "Didn't think someone like you would stop for us," he murmured, voice thick with shame. Mae looked at him steadily. "Someone like me?" He didn't answer, but his silence was louder than any apology. She ladled soup into bowls, the aroma of chicken and herbs cutting through the cold. They ate slowly, awkwardly, until words began to fill the quiet. Kyle told her about their mother who died when he was 15, about how the club became the only family he knew, how what started as freedom had turned into something heavier, darker. Mae told him about her late husband, Reverend Thompson, who'd preached forgiveness even when the world seemed to offer none. The hours blurred. The storm softened, and somewhere between midnight and dawn, suspicion melted into something else. Understanding, perhaps. When morning came, sunlight poured through the frosted windows like gold. The snow outside was blinding, piled high against the fences. Mae opened the curtains, half expecting her guests to have vanished. Instead, she found them sitting quietly by the fire, hands wrapped around mugs of tea as if afraid to disturb the peace. Kyle rose first. "We owe you," he said. His voice was rough but steady. "Didn't think anyone would stop, least of all someone like you." Mae smiled faintly, lines deepening around her eyes. "The good Lord didn't ask what color skin we'd help," she said. "He just said to help." When the tow truck arrived hours later, the driver's jaw nearly dropped. Word spread fast in a small town. 2 notorious riders rescued from a snowstorm by a widowed black schoolteacher. Some neighbors whispered that Mae had lost her senses, inviting those kinds of people into her home. Others called her a saint. But when a local reporter came asking why, Mae's answer silenced everyone. "You don't measure mercy by the past of the person receiving it," she said. "You measure it by the courage of the one giving it." Kyle and Shane left that afternoon, promising to return. Mae didn't expect them to. Weeks later, a heavy snow cracked the roof of her barn. She woke one dawn to the rhythmic sound of hammers. Stepping outside, she found it newly repaired, the boards clean and straight, the smell of fresh sawdust filling the air. A note was pinned to the door. "Thank you for saving us." "We're still learning what that means." Mae pressed the paper to her chest, eyes glistening. Winter passed. The gossip faded. Greenwood County settled back into its slow, familiar rhythm. But Mae noticed subtle changes. Strangers at the diner nodding at one another, drivers slowing on icy roads to offer rides, neighbors less quick to judge. Sometimes, late at night, she'd hear the distant hum of motorcycles passing through town, softer now as if in respect. Once she stepped onto her porch and saw 2 riders stop by the roadside, their headlights casting halos in the mist. One lifted a hand in salute before vanishing into the night. A week later, she found something in her mailbox. A black and silver patch stitched with the words "Brothers Keepers." Mae turned it over in her hands, the threads glinting faintly in the light. She knew what it meant. 2 hearts had changed that night, maybe more. In a world divided by fear and misunderstanding, one simple act of compassion had bridged something wider than any frozen highway. Months later, when the local paper finally published her story, the headline read, "The Night Compassion Rode Through the Storm." And in that quiet farmhouse, with the fire crackling and the wind whispering at the windows, Mae sat back in her rocking chair, the patch resting on her lap. She thought of her husband's old sermons, his favorite line repeated every Sunday without fail. "Hate freezes the soul, but kindness, it melts everything." Mae smiled softly. Outside, the snow began to fall again, gentle this time, and for the first time in years, the world felt warm.